Are you a dual identity person? Maybe you're in the USA and you're looking to make some money, but you're stuck in a position between America and other places. That is your own nation and other people. Well, the situation here is that you have to hack your cultural identity and start having a cultural arbitrage. You basically have two identities and two perspectives of life, and you want to take advantage of that. If you want to hear more about this, stick to the end of the video and you'll hear all I have to say about cultural arbitrage and having dual perspectives. Ultimately, this dual perspective identification is to outcompete local monopolies and have a footing within the sort of new place that you're in, even though many people throughout the world are accepted to have enough money and be cool enough to have that money. We basically weaponize the friction between the two worlds of having dual perspectives and having a single perspective for monolinguists and bilinguists to dismantle local monopolies that solely rely on cultural blindness to make their money. By exploiting information asymmetries, which we'll talk about in this video, and arbitrage, we outpace incumbents who lack our dual perspective lenses. This is raw economic warfare, where our hybrid identities becomes the ultimate weapon for securing financial and competitive dominance. The two worlds are immigrants and Americans, and it could go into like an A, B, A, C, A sort of dilemma with immigrant American and immigrant first generation who has citizenship but not was born American, but there's an immigrant who has an American child, and there's a white American dating immigrant, and they could go into four different sectors, but we're not going to go into that so much because we'll let the sort of previous videos help you understand this whole long story that I'm trying to present you and help you achieve money and wealth. Now, these two worlds that I'm basically talking about here is the American identities that you can come to the USA and make a lot of money, but the companies and monopolies and people who work for these companies know that the monopolies have to have a sort of function, and that function is to tell you that you are having this position, but you are not really allowed to have it. In my previous videos, I discussed euphemisms and many other things, but I don't think I particularly touched upon the topic of two different worlds, like the American and immigrant worlds, to have dual perspectives and these two different worlds competing with each other and conflicting with each other to make sort of a economic and arbitrage, or cultural arbitrage sort of dilemma. Because cultural arbitrage is essentially white people taking immigrant and cultural identities and selling it, because your cheaper and inferior culture is to sort of be bought and then sold back to white people, and that's the sort of thing that's going on with Scandinavian outfits and yoga, which was done in 2013, and spices, which was done back before he was a trader, and when we had war elephants destroying him, and now he has a war elephant known as a nuclear weapon. And we want to know what the cultural blindness is that he's selling. So the cultural blindness is the implication to how it has always been done for the entire conformity. So basically, what is cultural blindness? The implication to how it has always been done for either conformity and ease, or for the scarcity of educated individuals. What I mean is, the conformity and ease is for the ability to tell you, hey, you're not going to get some unless you have this American identity. And the scarcity of educated individuals is that you guys have all been told you're not going to get some so much that these educated individuals who have the right idea are now scared and are in scarcity, and they're not going to do as much as they should have done with their education, because America simply complacently gives them and appease them into having this American identity so that they don't cause a disruption within American society. So this is why we have to dismantle it, because these people have these two different worlds. They're saying, hey, we understand, these educated people, we understand that your monopoly is sort of selling, arbitraging off of minority cultures, and they're saying you're not going to get some if you do this as an American, and that's the two worlds conflicting. The Americans are saying you're not going to get some, and the immigrants are saying this is our culture, so we'll give you this and that. It's a huge big conundrum that I'm just presenting here, but I'm not too sure if you'll be able to grasp the concept like I have, because I lived in New York City. You as this person, I myself, can be ridding of this whole prediction of it's always been this way. So once someone says it's always been this way, we've been arbitraging your culture, we can dismantle and destroy it because we can predict it. And once they start getting the military, then it's time to take action, but everyone's scared of the hard work that these buildings take months to build. And my product and skills here in the USA is very good because I know about this cultural arbitrage the USA does all the time, and I don't want them to inherently have this position to make me inferior because they said you're not going to get some, and I still want to sell and make money off of the white American people who have a lot of money and have their military to back up their value. After all, money is infinite. The new way, my offer is funner and helps the poor. You're living with immigrants in the community and schools. You're going to be filed on. So the new way is the cultural arbitrage that white people have discovered throughout the world or throughout the USA and the internet. The internet has told them that they can sell this cheap third world country bullshit to white Americans for a lot of money, and because they're white they'll be able to make money and it'll be worth something because they perfected it and things like that. But the funner way is my way because it's the actual identity, and we see a lot of white boys dating minority girls and they're like, this is the actual way, but majority is so racist and America's interesty that they're like, no, these white boys who date are also a part of the white boys who are American interesty, and they take over the world through love and marriage. To top it all off, you're going to be living with immigrants and all the other sort of situations, so we're going to know what to do about it in the community and in schools. There could be violence, and a kid that you complained to your mom about was an immigrant, and he's not in that because he saw you being a American interesty guy trying to arbitrage his culture. Once again, arbitrage is to buy low and sell high, and that is a good idea because many of the things like Walmart people don't buy anymore because everyone knows what it is. But if you have these minorities coming in as immigrants, you're going to be able to arbitrage endlessly, and this is the trap that USA is. We're going to go into a couple more definitions. What is information asymmetry? Like I mentioned earlier, hacking cultural arbitrage, using your dual identity to outcompete local monopolies. We weaponize the friction between two worlds to dismantle stagnant local monopolies that rely on cultural blindness. By exploiting information asymmetries and arbitrage, we outpace incumbents who lack our dual lens perspective. This raw economic warfare, where our hybrid identity becomes the ultimate competitive advantage for securing absolute financial and personal dominance, needs to be addressed and dismantled for the reasons that I mentioned earlier, and that is because white Americans think they could do that, and his simple belief that he thinks he could do that is a problem because we want to make money and be wealthy off our own nations and not have to enforce it, like the USA does with his government as a side partition. Instead of respecting other nations, he has a job that he has to enforce it. So what is information asymmetry? Like I said, that information asymmetry and arbitrage would be a problem. Arbitrage, like I mentioned earlier, is, you should know by now, it is buy low, sell high. And information asymmetry is when a party knows more than the other significantly, and this imbalance can be used to gain advantage or destroy. And that is the sole identity of many white supremacy groups or white supremacy businesses that identify as majority Americans that run the American identity. Because if you know, we have one or two minorities to represent your little nation, where however demographic you are, and now we have all the information that we can run the USA safely and make the most money off of it and control the rest of the world, because your immigrants came to the USA for a better life and said that he wants to fall in, she wants to fall in love, he wants to fall in love, but we all know that we won't be able to deter the nuclear threat that he feels. So this information asymmetry is the intel and terroristic euphemisms that he's saying he has America's interest to secure this, but it is more like, oh, we don't want you to get some, so we're going to take all this information and have the most of it and have you fail and cause poverty because we don't like that you understand that we're doing cultural arbitrage. So once we exploit this cultural arbitrage and information asymmetry, we will be able to exploit it and exploit the American economy and make sales here and there, even if it is reproduced by me or reproduced by you. But watching this video, you'll be able to create sales, because once you get the notification that someone is feeling that he doesn't like you and someone is feeling that you outpace him, we know who this someone is, and he gets jealous and he starts telling somebody higher up, and they have to start sanctioning, they have to start tariffing, they have to start telling you're not going to get them, they have to start changing company policy, firing people because it doesn't match the American identity. And that's the whole situation that we're trying to sell here. We're trying to know cultural arbitrage by watching this video and know how to do exactly what to do with it, because cultural arbitrage is selling yoga and things like that for no reason, or selling tacos, or selling Chinese food, but Chinese people are strong enough and they're military, and Chinese, Japanese, Korean Vietnam, South Korea trifecta, quadfecta is strong enough to deter the American stuff. So this is why we need Bangladesh and India to be strong enough to deter the American stuff and basically copy what the Chinese do, just so the Chinese copy what we do, and we will be able to make money and sell to them. So long as it's good enough and aesthetic enough, we'll be able to sell to them immensely. Local monopolies are bleeding, and by December, they'll foreclose. They are intentionally omitting your value because of secret society values, but I am the cultural gap they miss. Sacrifice your singular placement, leverage your dual identity, and master the arbitrage. This isn't a one-year millionaire sprint, but guaranteed long-term dominance. The fourth situation is analyzing how established monopolies develop cultural cataracts. So the first situation is cultural cataracts that happen regardless of whether you agree with them or not. These monopolies or communities get together and they start voting and talking about how exactly one person is able to achieve goals and achieve the success that you're going to be able to manifest in the future. And they start creating cultural cataracts. Now, a cataract is something that affects your ability to see, and that is something that is highly recommended to go see a doctor if you end up having one. Cultural arbitrage comes into play because with these cultural cataracts, they're stopping you from seeing these identities so that they could have the money or get someone who has the money and start buying from these small companies and small cultural demographic communities and start selling to white people and perfecting it. And therefore you lose your women, you lose your boys, and you're in the house as an immigrant or an American, and you're like, where did my son go, and what did he do, and what is that, and he did all this. And it's because they're doing cultural arbitrage and they're trying to make it perfected and using science, technology, and devices to tell you consistently all day, every day, if the American economy is number one and the American companies are the ones who do it. And that's why you won't be able to get them. Now, these stagnant markets where the first world, the American world, competes with the second world, the immigrant world, they start coming into conflict because these American worlds are stagnant and predictable and there's no competition, so you're easily being controlled into having this whole monopoly control you. Things like going to Walmart for everything is such an American thing, and things like not going into something else is like an immigrant thing. But if a wealthy person goes into this immigrant business and they start seeing something they want to sell, they might start listing that product on Walmart, and then you'll see their product and he'll be making money and the immigrant will be foreclosed and he has to be kicked out and the white boy takes your girl again. Now, going back to cultural cataracts are for the preservation of American society despite their failing population and increase in immigration to maintain strong economic status. The whites vote this way and it's discrimination, but they voted it's not. And that complacency is encouraged because of the common consensus preservation of American culture belief that till the printed money is all sat on in banks and brokerage, they don't want minorities to be active, and therefore sanctions, military threats, all deliver that. And they make sure that you have any sort of situation that you can make money. They don't want you to be active in that because they want to be using their surveillance systems or whatever mass data systems to see what it. They have all these data centers and whatever they want to see so that they can see it. Now, having this dual lens perspective as an American and an immigrant is important because you'll be able to identify situations that no other group of person can. Basically, you are from your nation and you are from an American community, so you want to be able to bridge gaps and make the money, as I mentioned in a previous video. But this sort of conflicting friction is also what monopolies and other sorts of groups of people end up capitalizing off of and not letting you make the money. Even though they let you have some sort of situation in Walmart or wherever they allow you to retail in, you might not get the full exposure that you deserve because America's interest is all about competition, and the anti-competitiveness is sort of to tell you that it is the competition because we are the competition, and that's not letting you achieve your number one desire to be wealthy. Intentional blindness so that you won't be able to be witnessed or seen or be understood or accepted, respected, acknowledged, any sort of that synonym into American society when you're trying to make money, because the ultimate beautiful woman is also from your country and that is not going to help America get some. Just like how the Chinese are able to deploy and have their governments destroy the American sort of situation and interest and sell something to the American people all the time, the American people try to do that with Indian people, and they've done that with yoga, with the rise of feminism, where they have to accept feminism and they also have to accept the sort of ideation that India's coming and yada yada yada. And if you know that whole story, in a previous video I talked about that. The other thing is the cultural arbitrage, and we don't want you to do it. It makes the theft more expensive. So cultural arbitrage, like I said earlier, is exactly just buying low and selling high, but making you, the person who's defending your culture, not want to do or sell it makes white people stealing it more susceptible to having more money, because it makes their value, stealing your culture, more expensive, and it is more exclusive, and therefore it will be understood sooner or later. Once all the clients have come and bought from this white company, then your company will be understood and accepted, but you won't be making the money. America's population is always dropping, and the only reason why it's rising is because of immigration. Now, cultural blindness and cultural cataracts and cultural arbitrage is a sort of situation where we won't be able to, as Americans, make money. Americans vote all the time. They vote unilaterally and without a ballot, and they vote for things that are family related and culturally related. So if they vote they want to steal your culture, well, you sort of have to do many things to deter them, and fortunately as of 2026 we sort of deterred the yoga theft, but some women in power are not acknowledging it, as they believe their delusion has been successful, because they said they didn't give you some, and they said, didn't we actually not give you some and give it to him? And we also have the new generation being protected, because protect our kids, like I mentioned in a previous video. These two worlds of immigrant and American encourage immigrant complacency, because common consensus culture is to have all printed money sat on in banks or brokerages. They do this, they need to sanction and tariff your country whenever a minority is on the rise. They see that a minority is coming to a situation where he can make some money, but white Americans voted and they start telling their government officials that, hey, we need to sanction this country because these guys are going to get some. And this is what the USA does with their human rights. Their human rights is to tell everyone, because the USA is delivering on human rights for women, they want to sanction your country, because those men who aren't so human rights or policing human rights and won't be led by the USA to police in human rights unless they tell the USA, they are the problem. So that sort of situation is being contained as we speak. And local giants are sort of allowing these small businesses to run, but under the circumstance that they follow to sell to the American people and the culture. But that in turn would just have Americans buy the sort of thing that they discovered in Walmart and say that, oh, the American bought it, so we're going to turn it out this way and make it better, and she's going to start a new economy, and you won't be able to capitalize off of it, because the cultural arbitrage is one way. We Americans and white people will cultural arbitrage off you, and you can cultural arbitrage off us once we make it better, because something did all the work to make it better, because you're an inferior group of people. The two worlds are the immigrant and Americans, and they got the Americans with the immigrant or immigrant first year not born American and things like that. There's 4 different roots, and the cultural blindness that you want to look into is sort of this giving this situation. Now, I talked about cultural arbitrage. I talked about the two worlds and having this dual lines perspective within cultural arbitrage. I talked about cultural blindness, and I also talked about why we need to dismantle it. We need to dismantle it because we want to be able to make sales and ultimately have a reproducible system that we can refer back to and also update, so that we can make the money even on social media, because we know that the US government does this sort of system all the time and revisits something like the Constitution. And I also talked about information asymmetry. Information asymmetry, once again, is having a lot of information like Intel and using that to create or destroy. And we see Intel being used in current sort of situations. If you like this video, hit that like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next one.